Hello class, and welcome to Unit 1, Introduction to Geography and World Cultures, Chapter 1, Visualizing the World. This is Ms. Taggart, and today we're using our tech book found on our Discovery Education tab. The most important question regarding this chapter is, what does it mean to think like a geographer? Well, the first step, of course, is, what is a geographer? We're going to take a look at the world in spatial terms. How do geographers look at the world? Defining geography. What is it? Geography is the study of the location and distribution of the physical features and living things on Earth's surface and how they relate to each other. Geographers try to understand not only where things are located, but also why they are located there. A geographer might ask questions such as where, why there, and why is this issue important? Let's take a look at the Introduction to Geography.
Geography is the study of the Earth and its physical features, such as its mountains and rivers, as well as the study of the distribution of living things on our planet. Geographers are people who specialize in the study of geography. They use tools such as maps to understand the Earth's regions, resources, and climates. The geographers who study the United States find that it is an extremely interesting place because our country includes almost every kind of geographical feature, from icy glaciers to active volcanoes, from endless stretches of grass-covered plains to towering mountain peaks, from dry, rocky deserts to swampy wetlands, from magnificent waterfalls to wide, majestic rivers, and from peaceful farmlands to busy, crowded cities.
Geographers see the world in spatial terms. In other words, they organize their work by focusing on spatial areas or places. This sets them apart from other scholars, such as historians, who focus on time periods. Geographers look for both similarities and differences among various places on Earth. This helps them group places into regions. Nearby areas share common characteristics. These may be physical characteristics, such as terrain and climate, or cultural characteristics, such as histories, languages, religions, political systems, or economies. Regardless of how a particular regions are defined, the concept of region is useful for breaking the world into manageable units of study. Geographers try to find patterns in Earth's physical features and how they relate to them. A pattern is a regular or repetitive action or behavior. For example, a geographer might study the rivers in a country and find out that some rivers flood more than others, or that flooding happens at predictable times. Then the geographer would want to find out why this pattern occurs. He or she would also be interested in how the flooding affects the lives of the people nearby. Do they adapt their activities to the river's flooding pattern, or do they build dams or otherwise change the environment to try to control the flooding? We're going to take a look at the principles for the Geography Principles Introduction.
Which we all live is very complex and diverse. It is made up of surface features that vary from oceans to mountains, from sand dunes to canyons. We are surrounded by an atmosphere that can vary from stormy to calm and sunny. The plant and animal life we share our Earth with can vary from the barren tundra to the lush tropical rainforest, from land creatures such as elk to sea animals like whales. Finally, humans themselves and the structures they build can vary from large cities to remote villages. Geography is the science that describes this variety. That is, how things vary from place to place across the planet, examining how people are affected by these variations, determining how and where they live. Throughout most of human history, groups of people have placed boundaries to create social and political units. We know some of these units as neighborhoods, cities, counties, and states. In this program, we will define the major types of civic units and describe their similarities and differences. We will show how physical geographic factors have played a role in creating these entities, and in some cases, as with rivers or lakes, even form the boundaries that define them. We will take a detailed look at urbanization, the process that has transformed half of the world's people into city dwellers. And finally, we will learn how geographers classify cities.
To acquire, process, and report information, geographers use a variety of tools, including maps and measuring instruments. Also, geographers often construct mental maps. A mental map is a map in a person's mind that contains his or her knowledge of an area or people. Mental maps help geographers to organize and place value on information. However, these maps can include biases and inaccuracy that the geographer must correct with research. Our next step, defining regions.
The final theme of geography, regions. Regions are another way geographers study human populations. Regions tend to define themselves on the basis of many factors. Cultural elements like ethnicity, religion, language, and politics often help distinguish one region from another. However, climate or topography or other geographic factors can also be used to identify regions. One example is in the southwestern United States. This region is made up of Arizona, New Mexico, and Texas. The Hispanic ethnicity, Spanish language, and Catholic religion are the prominent cultural characteristics of the region. In addition, much of the region is desert. These regional distinctions, however, have no set border and may vary in certain places. By knowing about regional traits, whether those of the Southwest or those from other parts of the globe, one is better able to categorize a complex world.
Our next step is physical geography. Physical geography is one of the main branches of geography and world cultures. It involves the study of Earth's natural features, including water, landforms, vegetation, and climate. Physical geographers curious about these features are interrelated. Therefore, they study things like the effects of flooding on soil fertility and the role of wind and ice shaping landforms. Physical geographers also analyze how physical features interact with plant and animal life to create ecosystem. An ecosystem consists of all of the living and non-living in an area and how they relate to and depend on each other. Next step, human geography. While physical geography focuses on the physical features of Earth, human geography involves studying human activities as they relate to Earth. This branch of geography analyzes how people interact with the environment, including how they adapt to and also change the surrounding land. Human geography also includes studying patterns of human settlement, movement, and cultural development. In addition, it covers the ways people organize their governments and economy to use and distribute resources. Focusing on the patterns of human settlement, movement, and cultural development. Human geographers also look at where people settle and what causes them to move. People are not distributed evenly across Earth's surface. Some areas are much more heavily populated than others. Human geographers look for clues in the surrounding environment to understand why that is the case. For example, in Japan, the mountainous terrain strongly affects the population distribution. Much of the population is crammed into the nation's few flat areas, while many of the mountainous regions remain sparsely populated. Economic and political systems play a huge role. Understanding the economic and political systems of different regions is another part of human geography. People everywhere have to meet their needs for food, water, for shelter, and for an organized society. They have to decide how best to use the available natural resources and how to manage conflict over resource use. Geographers study the ways people create governments and economic systems to meet their needs. Let's take a look at environmental factors and how it has affected population and the growth of urban areas.
So many other cities, Fresno, California has undergone enormous change over the past 100 years. Much of this has come about as a result of three factors: population change, the environment, and urbanization. And while each of these is often analyzed separately, it is the dynamic, constantly shifting interplay among all three that is perhaps most significant.
One of the painful things for those of us who enjoy living in cities is that there's no free lunch when it comes to urban development. If you are going to create a city, you impact the natural environment in a negative way. The development of some of our favorite cities, San Francisco, which advertises itself as everyone's favorite city, the creation of San Francisco virtually destroyed the Sierra in terms of ruining its ecology, setting off terrible problems of pollution, denuded its forests.
In parts of Asia, the greatest threat to the environment is explosive population growth.
Shanghai, there are already 13 million people, and in Beijing it's 15 million people, and in Hong Kong we are having 8.3 million people. Definitely, the more people you have in Hong Kong, the more air pollution, because you need to travel, you build on more roads, that more people get into their car to drive. So this is a very bad causing effect here. The major pollution source will be vehicular emission here, particularly those buses, minibuses and taxis, what we call the fleet buses or the fleet vehicles in Hong Kong.
Cities hurt nature. One of the things we've learned in the last 50 years is that we can't keep on doing this. And the reason is that the end of nature means the end of cities. It means the end of us. We are embedded in nature, even though we exhaust nature in order to make our lives possible. So people ask the serious question: how can we have cities impact nature, but impact it in a more benign way or in a less disastrous way? And simple things like dealing with pollution runoff, factory runoff into rivers and streams is one modest mechanism through which urban development doesn't need to have such disastrous consequences.
You can educate people and try to change their behaviors. Recycling is a great example of the way humans have changed their behavior and are capable. If we can do the same thing with some of these causes of urban runoff as we've done with recycling, we'll have a success. The other side of it is regulating and creating rules that will prevent some of these urban runoff problems. That includes land use practices and development too. There are ways we can treat our watersheds in such a way that even if we do tend to pollute them, that those pollutants don't make it straight to the beach.
There are a number of ways in which people in cities who are increasingly aware of the consequences on the natural environment, there are numbers of ways in which they've gone about trying to do a better job of urban development and make things more benign than they otherwise would be. One is to try to restrict the growth of the city in geographic terms. That is to impose what are sometimes called urban limit lines. That is to draw a circle around existing development or maybe a bit out from that and say no further. The other thing to do is to affect what stuff is made of in the first place. So, for example, lead paint has been eliminated from the United States. It's still in some old buildings, but no one can buy and use lead paint anymore except under some very special industrial circumstances. And so by changing the nature of paint, we have altered what we do to the earth.
But perhaps the single most important contribution to the cause of environmental protection is the growing awareness that the environment, much like the economy, is a global rather than simply a local or regional issue.
Environmental hazards in one part of the world will have impacts and implications in other parts of the world. The forest fires in Brazil are likely to have microclimatic changes elsewhere. The air pollution from China will be taken downwind into Japan and other parts of the world. So it's one neighborhood, and the environment makes neighbors of us all.
All right, everyone, let's continue on part 2 video, location, location, location.